Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, along with Sarah.
Hello!
And it's Sarah's birthday today. Yay! So wishing Sarah a huge birthday. Huge birthday. Happy birthday.
This is the huge birthday happening right here.
Okay. Milestone birthday.
No. I'm only 38.
Oh, okay.
I just mean this is the big to do today for my birthday. Doing video.
And you're celebrating with everybody. That's awesome. We are going to paint this rose today, and I did provide a line drawing on my blog if you want to transfer that. I would leave out these 3 flowers. I didn't like them after I looked at them. I think they're kind of too extended off of the flower, so so I'm not going to put them. I didn't put them in this sketch, and I don't think I'm going to do the background on this either, because I think that the flower will stand out a lot nicer if it doesn't have the background on there. I did the background simply. I taped my paper on all 4 sides to a board, and then I just added pretty much a little bit of all the colors that we're going to be using today, and then just really light, let it dry, and then I went over and painted all of that. So obviously I didn't put green where like the flower was. I just put some of that carmine pink there. But other than that, it's just a wet and wet background. If you want to do that, feel free, but I'm going to do this one with a white background. Now, I wanted to try, because a few people asked me about the Stonehenge aqua paper, and I had gotten a sample a couple months ago, and I just completely forgot about it. So I painted this one on the cold press, and I'm going to paint the one today together on the hot press paper, which is smoother, so we can kind of see the difference. And that way, for those of you that were asking about it, you can kind of see it in action, because it is kind of new, and that way you'll just kind of get an idea about it. So we're going to get right into it. We are going to be using a few different colors. I just got this Rembrandt set because I need my head examined apparently, and it was on sale. I couldn't resist it, and I've wanted it for a while. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Your head looks well attached to me.
I'm going to use a carmine, which is kind of a neutral pinky red. It's just very slightly cool, not terribly cool, but it's just a little slightly cool, I guess. We're going to use a little bit of permanent rose. We're going to use some cadmium lemon, some sap green, some transparent brown oxide. But you can, just approximate whatever you have closest. I'm also using some Delft blue, but you could use some Prussian blue if you don't have that. We're going to start off with a wash. And what I want you to do is actually wet your flower first. And just doing that with clear water. Oh, if you have any questions, just type the word question in all caps, and then Sarah will see it, and she can relay any questions to me if the moderators can't help you out. And try to keep the questions to watercolor related topics, so that it'll be really helpful for folks watching the replay, because they're probably thinking the same questions that you have.
Mm-hmm. Dawn Anderson, I don't have carmine. Could you suggest a substitute?
Sure, you could use alizarin crimson, quinacridone rose, rose madder, permanent rose. You don't need 2 reds. I started off with this with that carmine, and then I decided that I wanted a little bit pinker towards the end, so I glazed over with the rose madder. So it doesn't really matter, just something that's cooler. You don't want like a tomato red, you want something that's a little bit pinkier. And I'm gonna make a little puddle of yellow, the lemon, cadmium lemon, and you want it pretty watery, because otherwise cadmium lemon can be opaque.
Varusiva, Lindsay, have you used Turner's Jewel Set or Pearl Set watercolor? Your opinion on that, please.
For watercolors, the only Turners I've used are the ones in the 18 value set. So unfortunately, I can't help you on that.
But perhaps one of the moderators has.
Yeah, I've used the Turner Pearl acrylics, and they're lovely. I really like them on the jelly plate. Forgot to transfer the bottom part of that petal, so I'm just kind of freehanding it in. So already I can see that the hot press paper does want to kind of buckle a little bit more being wet. I don't paint with hot press paper very often, so this is kind of a fun experiment for me. The yellow is going to warm it up and give it kind of a peach tone, but this is really, really light that we want to have. And I've linked all the products in the video description if you have any questions over any of the things that I'm using.
Tammy Wolf, do you like hot press paper as opposed to cold press for specific projects? I'm new to watercolor and so far have only used cold press.
I generally use cold press. Sometimes I use rough for landscapes. I use hot press pretty much for stamping only, like rubber stamping. But I thought since I have a sample of this and it's nice paper, I would give it a try because I know a lot of botanical artists like it because you can capture better detail because it's so smooth. You don't have to deal with that texture. And I'm also going to do a wash of green on the leaves. Just be careful where the leaf and the flower meet. You don't want them to kind of wick together. So I'm going to take some sap green and a little of that lemon to make kind of like it's going to be almost like a neon green. I'm going to add a little touch of the Indothrone blue. Use Prussian if you don't have that. That's a nice substitute for... Chewy's making small noises over there.
Well, she's snuffling around. She's on crumb patrol.
Oh, Indothrone blue or Delft blue is a really nice alternative to indigo because it's a single pigment. So you're going to have that, more luminous color, and plus your indigo can be made from a variety of different colors depending on the manufacturer. So by using Delft blue, it's going to look the same. Any Indothrone blue is going to look very similar. So that just kind of, it's also I don't want to call it a muddy blue, but it's definitely, it's kind of gray and dark. So it gives you those tones of indigo.
Sunflower Bermuda. What is the difference between black watercolor and black gouache?
Black gouache is going to be opaque and black watercolor should be transparent or semi-transparent. So it's probably either they're using a black pigment that tends to be more opaque or they have opacifiers in it.
Encouraging Hope. Can you describe some of the qualities of the Rembrandt paint that you are using today?
Super vibrant, super transparent, glaze as well. It's just a really beautiful, bright, clear paint. I'll show you I did my big swatch here yesterday when I unwrapped the papers and unwrap the pans, and it's just such a beautiful range of colors. I had a small set of tubes that I purchased because I wanted to try it out, and I didn't, and these weren't on sale. This has been this kit has been very expensive on Amazon, and I'd seen it like last summer. It was down to like, I think like $139 or something like that, and I hemmed and hawed, and I didn't end up getting it, and then I immediately regretted it when the price went up to like $180. And then I'm like, if I see that on sale again, I'm getting it. So it went on sale and I ordered it. Then I canceled the order because I'm like, what am I doing? Have I lost my mind?
Madness.
And then and I went on a school trip, and I got back from the school trip, and I'm like, I wonder if it's still on sale. And it was. And I think I deserve a treat for chaperoning all those kids at Six Flags.
Means.
I deserve a treat for that. So I did order it, and it's still on sale. But it's just beautiful paint. And I bought that little set of tubes to kind of test it out, and I really enjoyed it. So, I mean, but it's a good professional set of watercolors. If you already have professional watercolors, you don't need these. If you're looking for some, or if you want like a large range of colors like I have here, then it's an option. Trying not to enable, but they are lovely. And I just left little gaps because we're gonna have darker colors in there anyway, so I don't even need to really go in and paint that. Okay, I am going to just hit this with my heat tool just to make sure it's good and dry. And then we'll start we'll do our shadow layer after this on the flower.
Fantastic Neo. Can you suggest some colors if you want the roses to be yellow, please?
Sure. First, I would find a reference photo of a yellow rose so you can really see what colors you see in the shadow. Or go, if you have access to an actual rose, that would be great. Generally, you're going to be dealing in shades from lemon to orange. But you probably will want like a contrasting color such as violet to mix in with some of those yellows, and maybe a little blue so it doesn't go brown, and get your really dark shadows that way. But definitely getting a good reference photo, or actually like picking a yellow rose so you can really look at it and see what those shades are going to help. You might find a lot of green in the shadows. You might find a lot of gray and lavender in the shadows. But you're gonna need a range of yellows, cool to warm, so that you can get that the full range of color.
Holly Parker, can you do watercolor painting on canvas?
Yes, there you can get special canvases for it, or you can use watercolor ground on any canvas. So now I'm going to make my shadow color. I like to get my darkest value in after the initial wash because it helps me be a little bolder with my shadows. So I'm going to start off with my carmine, and I'm going to add some Indanthrone blue to it. And you can see, look how dark, you can see how strong that blue is. It really almost blackens it. Need a little more red in there. And it's going to give us kind of like a wine color, and that's what you want. And we're going to go in and put all of our like deepest shadows in.
Julie Caregard, have you tried Viano watercolors?
I have not, but I've seen them advertised. I've seen them, well, I've seen them on Amazon suggested. I think they're kind of like a student grade. I think that they're kind of like a scholastic standard in other countries, actually, kind of like we have Crayola. I really like putting my darks in at this stage because it really helps you define what you're doing. It helps you get a good form down, so you don't get lost too badly when you're going in to add your midtones. If you have a hard edge and you want to kind of soften it up because you know it wouldn't be so darkly shadowed further up on a petal, just wet your brush and blot it, and then just drag it. Drag out the color a little bit. You don't need as much water on your brush when you're working with hot press paper to get your paint to flow because the surface is so much smoother. So that's something I need to realize as I'm working. It's really fun to try a different surface once in a while. It's kind of like painting on like a mixed media paper. Like if you have the Canson XL mixed media sketchbook, that would be very similar.
Little Joker Jr., have you heard of the Color watercolor set? If so, what are your thoughts on it? I'm thinking about getting them.
Is it core like QOR?
COLORE.
Oh no, I don't know that one. But you can always check on Amazon. There's reviews. You want to look for verified purchasers, just because they're people that actually bought that particular product from that seller, so that I would think you'd get more of an accurate review that way, but as opposed to like a paid review. But if anybody else in chat or watching the replay has used them and wants to comment, that would be really helpful for other folks watching the replay.
Nicole Faulkner, I have trouble with my transfer paper leaving a finish on my watercolor paper that the paint won't stick to. Can you recommend a brand of paper that will not create a resist?
I've had really good luck with the Lowell Cornell, and actually I think it's mostly Lowell Cornell that I use. It's sold for toll painters, actually. It's more of like craft, acrylic, that sort of thing. Royal Langnickel also makes one. I haven't used the Sorel, but I've heard good things about them. But a lot of them do have a little bit of a wax coating because I think it helps keep the graphite attached. But I think Lowell Cornell is what I use the most, and I haven't really had any issues with it. You can always make your own too. Take a piece of tracing paper and rub it with a graphite stick.
Jordan Sinclair, I'm going camping in Estes Park next week and want to know what a good watercolor set would be, not too pricey in case I lose it.
You could take the Cotman Sketcher Box would be a good set to bring. The Koi Sketcher Box is very affordable. You can even find that. They had a really good price on it on Amazon, but I know they even have it at Well, AC Moore has it, so I imagine a lot of big box craft and hobby stores would have it. Because it's always nice if you can use a coupon. Those are a couple good picks.
Lisa Burke, do you think blooms are more of an issue on hot press or cold press?
I think they tend to happen more on hot press paper. So far, so good here, but I can even see there where I just did a little light wash. I've got a little bit of blooming because it will tend to puddle. It doesn't like separate and level out the paper, the paint as much.
Baru Siva, are you putting snap brushes to more use? How are they doing? Saw the review video and liked them, but not seen you using in the tutorials.
Oh yeah, I haven't used them that much. I've got so many brushes, honestly.
She really does, people. I've seen.
I'm a brush floozy. I've got so many brushes.
I've seen all of them. I probably haven't even seen all of them.
Probably you have
but
not.
I've seen a chunk of them.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're very much like they're golden Taklon brush. They're going to not hold as much water as like the mimics that I'm using, but they'll be more like a Majestic or an Aqualon, the same type of material. So they're solid value. A Princeton doesn't make a bad brush. I've got to say that as well. Princeton art brushes are great. I love their Neptune series. It's very much like a mimic. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're a beautiful brush. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that color because I'm running out. Again, the Carmine and the Delft Blue, or also known as Indothrone.
Funny Dude, what are your top 5 watercolor brands?
Oh, and I feel like this answer changes like
Depends on the day,
yeah.
Depends on the weather, depends on what you're painting.
I would say M. Graham. These Rembrandts are pretty new to me, but I really like them. Daniel Smith. I don't have too many of those, but I do like them. I like Mission Gold. So I mean, there's a lot of controversy about Mission Gold. I really like Mission Gold. Holbein. Gosh, there's so many. I don't know. How many was that?
That's a good start. And don't you have like a review?
I do.
You have lots of review videos too.
Right.
So
Schminka Sennelier is good.
You like the White Knights.
Yep.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot. Gosh, don't make me choose.
They all have their pros, their advantages.
Right.
Chrissy Marie, have you ever used Artist Loft watercolor?
I haven't. It was Artist Loft is like a Michaels brand, I think. We don't have a Michaels nearby.
I think we had a couple people in chat on previous that said that they've tried them and they're very chalky, very grainy, like they're not great.
That's it, and unfortunately that is kind of par for the course of like a house brand, like a store brand, because they're not really they're catering to kind of more like a hobbyist or somebody's, you know, just first try. They don't not necessarily somebody that's, you know, looking to do much more than like a simple craft project with watercolors. You're much better sticking with like a name brand that you've heard of before. By the way, I'm working with a smaller brush, and I usually work with, this is a number 2 round for the shadows, because you don't want to grab too much water. If you're working with a bigger brush, you can have so much water that it will want to dilute the paint, and you might actually get kind of big blobs where you're not expecting them.
And I'd like to remember, we've had several people requesting videos and ideas. Any sort of ideas or requests that you have for videos, please put them on her blog. She has an option for video requests. She doesn't do requests here live during the chat.
Yeah, I never remember them.
You mean you have other things to remember?
I need them in writing. I can go back to it. And then after, a lot of times when I paint a line. I want it, sometimes I want a hard edge, but sometimes like there I wanted a hard edge because that's where a petal is folded. But a lot of times I want to soften it. So I just I rinse my brush, blot it, and then I go in and soften that edge and float out that color. And this is a lot of, it's kind of a lot of busy work actually, this part right here, but it really makes the rest of it, when you take your time on this, it makes the rest of it go pretty quickly. So like there, I've just put down the color, but I want to soften this, so I'm just cleaning my brush, blotting off excess, and then kind of dragging out that shadow a little bit so I get that kind of more velvety, soft look on the petals. And don't be afraid to go dark with this because we're going to be glazing over it, and every glaze we add is going to kind of make it a little less pronounced. Wonder how many people are painting along and how many people are chatting today.
We got a lot of chatters. A lot of chatters.
That's good though.
Pam H., what is the difference between a beginner's, intermediate, and advanced watercolor class? What different things are usually taught?
Well, I think that depends on the instructor. I know for my class I just put on Teachable, some of those techniques that I showed would be considered advanced in other people's classes, and some of the techniques that I really like to use, like side loading, would not even be a technique taught in a typical watercolor class because it's more of like a decorative technique. But I think generally like your beginner class would have like wet into wet and wash techniques, maybe not controlled wash, but like wet into wet, and you know, stuff like that, basic brush strokes. But it does depend on the teacher, and if they're just doing techniques or if they have like finished projects that you're working on too, like you're applying it on a finished painting. It's always a good idea to, you know, check with the instructor, because I recommended a class once to a student from an instructor who I really liked, but she took the class and it was a beginner class, but she felt very overwhelmed by everything in the class. Like she said, it felt more advanced. So it's not a bad idea to check in with an instructor and see what you're going to be learning, and then you can see whether, you know, you recognize some of those terms, or if you think it would be more suited for like a more advanced student, or if you think it would be too simple for you. Either way.
Happy Anesta, have you ever tried Sumi technique with watercolor?
I have a bit, not much, because I really like the look of Sumi painting, but it's not my style. I don't have the patience for the brush, the Chinese brush and Japanese brush techniques. But I mean, I have tried it. And done a little bit with it, but it's nothing to write home about. I'm going to switch to a bigger brush because I want to work on the leaves a little bit. And I'm going to basically be kind of building leaves, almost like if you had seen like fabric printing. I like that technique a lot better, just kind of like laying down, like we put our lights and I'm going to lay down some middle values, and then I'll lay down some darker values in a bit. But I like how they're kind of separated. There's something very appealing of that to me. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take the sap green.
Julie, go lay down. You're fine. Go.
She's awfully bothered today by something.
Yeah.
So
encouraging hope. Can you share a little about deciding where to put those shadows?
For the petals, I was pretty much putting them under every, I'm putting a shadow under every petal as it's turned over and in the depths between the petals. Here with these midtones, I'm just trying to kind of leave out some highlight areas. This is a number 4 round. You could probably go a little bigger if you wanted to. I don't think I'd go any smaller, because when you have a brush this size, you can really kind of press it in and get some nice wide chunks of shape, and then you could go up on the tip and get fine details as well.
Naila Amdad, when painting with watercolors, what's the best way to fix a mistake?
I usually brush over it with water and a medium stiff brush like this, and then blot it with a paper towel. Make sure to leave some of that wash from the previous layer showing through so that you can have a multi-tonal color.
Sherry 10, could you explain water to paint ratio? Also when you dry or wet brush?
Well, here I'm on dry paper, and my paint is probably about the consistency of, I would say, whole milk maybe. If your paint is more on the opaque side, you'll probably want to thin it more. This is a nice transparent paint, so I don't have to worry about that quite so much.
Michael Ann, what paper do you like that falls in between Strathmore 400 and Arches?
Honestly, those are kind of, I like both of those, and I would kind of consider them, like I would consider Arches kind of the next step up from Strathmore 400 actually, because Strathmore 400 does something that a lot of cellulose papers can't seem to muster, and that is getting a very comparable feel to cotton paper with an inexpensive cellulose paper. So, I mean, I would, if Arches is out of your budget, just stick with a Canson 400. And then when you do, you know, go to Arches, or maybe you splurge for that special painting, you're not going to have this big learning curve. It's going to behave very similarly. Not worried about the leaves being too realistic. I just want to kind of get the feeling of those different tones in there. And these leaves are actually fairly smooth, so I don't need to try to get too much of that serrated edge that a lot of, you can get a little bit of a bump on them, but I won't go too crazy. And then on our rosebuds here, we also want to make sure we get that mid-tone. It's okay if you bring that all the way to the bottom, because you'll be putting a darker green on top. That's almost dry brush there, where I have not very much water on my brush on dry paper. The paint wants to skip a little bit. It's a great way to get some texture too. You were typing like crazy over there.
Oh, we just had a few people that were asking questions off topic, and I was just reminding them that we stick with just watercolor questions specifically.
Yeah, or you guys talk about whatever you want in the chat, but as far as answering live. All right, I'm going to hit this with the heat tool again, just because if any of those shadows are still wet and I go over them, they're going to lift rather than let me glaze. So whenever you're having a problem glazing, one of the problems could be that your base layer is not dry enough, and when you're going over with your glaze color, you're just reactivating that paint, because watercolor never really becomes permanent. So you got to make sure that's really dry so you can layer on top. If you're working with student grade watercolors, a lot of times you're going to have issues glazing because the fillers that are in the student grade paint prevent the watercolor from really grabbing the paper. It almost makes it like a washable paint. So if you are working with student grade paints, it's very important you dry between layers. And if you still can't get that glaze, you might need to maybe invest in a couple tubes of artist grade in the colors that you're most likely to want to glaze with, or for your undercolors. You can glaze over with a student grade, no problem, but it's using the student grade on the bottom, it's going to want to lift up. I noticed that with Cotman a lot.
Jennifer Hoppy, do you ever use a Griswold technique for shadows? Is there any benefit to this technique?
Well, actually, this technique is very much like a Griswold. As we build up, and you can even completely change your color, like I ended up doing here, because I had very so the reds were very muted, and so I just went over the entire thing with like the more of a pinky red. I'll show you here with my little swatch. I always make a little swatch to go in my paint box, laid out exactly the way my paints are. So I was using this color here, and it was like, geez, that's really muted looking. So I glazed over the entire thing with that, and it just pumped up those colors at the end when I was working on this piece. So yeah, you totally can do that with watercolor. You just have to be careful, make sure you dry between layers, and you don't lift up everything underneath. And I wouldn't use black because black goes muddy really quick. So you want to use shades like a mixed violet, like we've done here, or something that is that's not an actual black. So now I'm going to go in with, I'm going to take my carmine, and I'm going to take that rose madder. I believe it's called rose madder in this one. Oh my gosh, the writing on these things are so tiny. Permanent quinacridone rose, rather. Holy moly. My eyes were so tired after like making that chart yesterday because it was so hard to see everything. And I'm going to start, whoops, that probably just gave me static on the microphone. I apologize. I'm going to go in, I'm just going to start kind of where my shadow is on one of these petals, and it doesn't matter what one you start with, honestly. I'm just starting with a nice big one so I can kind of get a feel for this color in my brush. So I'm putting down an amount of color, rinsing and blotting my brush, and then I'm going to spread it out and try to extend it kind of out to the edge.
Happy Anesti, how do you create the illusion of wet on wet technique without actually doing wet on wet? I honestly don't like doing wet on wet, but I like the results.
You kind of need to do the technique. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe you could put some watercolors in spray bottles and maybe spray it if you don't like painting a wet and wet technique, but it's kind of its own thing. I'm going in with just a little of that cadmium lemon and getting the edge of that petal where the highlight is. Now, one thing I noticed with the hot press paper versus the cold press paper is that I think a hot press paper shows your flaws a little bit more. And if you're not working quick enough, your paint starts to dry on you. I think you're going to get much more like of a streaky effect. So just kind of keep that in mind. And if you have a bunch of little close petals together, you can just kind of glaze over them all, especially in the center where things are going to be a little bit darker. And I like before in the other example, I pretty much painted this all with that red I had been using, and then went over and glazed over it with the quinacridone rose afterwards. But I'm doing it all in one step this time because I know that's what I want to have.
Fabi Momor, I have problems painting fur on animals. Can you explain the best technique to paint fur?
I recommend picking up a brush. It's called a rake, and that will make little, it's a brush, it's a flat brush, but it has like a longer bristle every once in a while. So when you paint it, it just automatically gives you this furry look. So if dry brushing is not your strong point, that will give you that, that look very easily.
And I think I know you have at least, you did one bunny one this year for Easter.
Yep, and I did a
showed the
fox.
fur technique. So you do have some videos in your archive too that
That's
they could go look up.
Good memory.
For reference to kind of get the technique.
That's true. Good memory. Yeah, and the fox one, they would both show you the fur technique.
Can't remember important stuff, but I can remember the Easter video. Oh well.
So I'll apply paint, and then I'll rinse my brush and go in and blend edges that need to be blended. You can also have a damp, clean brush in your other hand and just kind of switch between them, but you still are going to need to clean that brush off every once in a while. So I usually just clean it. Just use the same one. Throwing a little bit of that lemon in some of the highlight areas. You can do that later too, if you just make sure you leave the area light enough if you want to do that. I think I'm going to skip that one because it's next to a petal that might not be dry, and move down here. And anything with that rose in it will tend to want to stain, so you do need to get those edges fairly quickly. And I like to clean my brush off before I grab the yellow, just to keep the colors a little fresher. I think I like the cold press better.
You think so?
I think so, yeah. Even though this is a fairly detailed subject, I think I prefer the forgiving aspect of the cold press. I can see why it's the most versatile paper. I mean, I guess if you're using like a lot of colored pencil or something like that in all your work, having the hot press would conserve your colored pencil.
Whitney Craig, I am a new watercolorist and have followed along with several of your videos. When I paint on my own, it doesn't turn out well. Are there subjects you recommend painting to start?
Landscapes might be a good place to start, because you don't notice if a tree's in the wrong place, where you might notice if an eyeball's in the wrong place on an animal or a person. But I think you also need to paint what you're interested in, because it doesn't matter if it's easier or more difficult. If you're not interested in it, you're not going to stick with it. So I would try to find, things you're interested in that aren't too complex. So what I'm doing, when I rinse my brush, I'm actually wiping it on a paper towel right next to my water bucket. I probably shouldn't have tried to do 2 petals at once, because they're drying on me pretty quickly. Now, if you get a situation where you get some lines like I have here, you can go in with your scrubber brush. This is a Maxine's mop, and I can just go in and disturb all of that paint and kind of get rid of those lines and then repaint.
Lisa Burke, how do you know if a color is transparent, opaque, or staining?
Well, if it's staining, it's going to be transparent generally. Opaque, a lot of opaque colors tend to be granulating. You will notice that some pigments have certain characteristics that you'll kind of remember with the more painting experience you have. But generally, if you're buying artist quality paints, it'll tell you on the label. Or if you've lost the packaging, you can go to the paint company's website, and it will have that information there. Like Daniel Smith has a really nice chart that gives you all that information. Most art supply, reputable art supply companies will have a chart on their website that you could just print even, and that can help you if you're buying paint, you're trying to get a certain characteristic, or if you've just lost your literature that came with your paints and you need to find out some information and you don't feel like swatching it out. Just hitting the edges with a little bit of that yellow. It tends to warm them up and make them a little bit fresher looking. Now this petal, I just want to put a light glaze of the pinky color on there because I've got a shadow right next to it where like the petal is folded. And then I'm going to do a little yellow on the outside. The yellow is such a strong color that I put it on the palette, add water to it, and then I go and pick up like a little droplet. Otherwise, it gets a little too strong for me to deal with.
Erin Mist, would you say it's more difficult to do a loose technique on hot pressed paper? Does the color move and flow as easily?
I don't know. I think I would prefer, if I'm doing a loose technique, to use cold press paper and tape it down, because hot press paper does tend to warp more. So that's kind of frustrating. And if you're doing a loose technique, you're probably using a lot more water. And I think that it would be frustrating. But everyone's got their own preferences. So, I mean, I just recommend, you can usually buy most fine art papers by the sheet. Buy a sheet, tear it down, put it in a folder that's labeled with what it is so you know what you have there. And then, you know, try different techniques on the little pieces you've cut and then decide what works best for your style. A lot of times once you get used to a paper, it doesn't really matter because you can adapt to whatever qualities it has. You can always crinkle up a paper towel. Like that petal, I think it's going to fade out just fine, but right now it does look a little bright, so I'm just going to kind of pounce it a little bit just to take off any excess paint. This is a little time consuming, but it's kind of fun. It's a nice exercise in shadowing. Some of these petals I know are going to have some darker shadows on them later, so I just need to get the base color down.
Monica Arredondo, does Daniel Smith watercolor need honey or glycerin when setting a palette? What about Winsor Newton Cotmans?
I haven't really found them to. The Cotman you might want a little dab of glycerin in there just to, because it is a student grade paint, but I haven't really had any issues with my Cotmans cracking. The Daniel Smith, I think maybe the Primatac, if you're going to let that dry out in your palette instead of keeping it in the tube, your mineral colors are not going to re-wet quite as easily. So I'd recommend either leave them in the tube or maybe add a little bit of glycerin to them just to, you know, help them out a little bit. But the regular Daniel Smith are fine. I have their essential set, and those are just fine. You don't need anything added to them. If you like a color that has honey, you could try the Sennelier or the M. Graham. They both contain honey. They're beautiful paints. The M. Grahams are a little bit more vivid. The Senneliers are a little bit more muted, but they're both beautiful. A little bit of yellow here, going to hit the edges. A little blend. So much easier to get streaks on the hot press, so you do have to be careful about that when you're trying to blend two colors together. And keep turning your work so that you can approach every petal in a comfortable manner. And rinse your brush when you change colors so you can keep your colors fresh.
Little Joker Jr., how much were your brushes? Did you get them in a set or individually?
My mimics, they came in a set. They were, you know, it's funny because I think they were more, I'm thinking they were about $60, but I keep seeing them for much less. So either I'm mistaken or I bought them when they were new before the price dropped. I'm not sure. But Amazon has them, and they're sold. I think they're sold from Jerry's at Amazon or Jerry's Autorama. So you can check both places and see where you get the better deal. Okay, so now I'm going to move back to the leaves. I'm going to take my sap green and add some of the Delft blue or Indothrone blue, depending on what company you've bought your paints from. The pigment is PB60. It's actually, the pigment name is Indothrone blue, but Delft blue is what it's often called. And now I'm going to go in and add the shadows on the leaves. And I want to make sure that I let those colors show through. They're already there. I just want to add a little bit. And if you're a rubber stamper and you use those like stamp sets by Altenew, think of this as like like how you would stamp on your darker color, how you build them up to make your photorealistic type of stamping. It's the same idea. It's like this would be what you would have last. I know it's a kind of a random example, but if you're a stamper, and you're going to know what I mean. But basically, I'm just kind of splashing in some of the dark shadows. You do need this paint a little bit thicker, more of like kind of a cream, like a half and half type cream consistency. But you need to let the other colors show through so you'll get that life in the leaves. And think about balance as you're looking at your work and you're looking at those leaves. Where do you need more dark? Where do you need less? It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. You want to make sure that it looks balanced compared to whatever else you have in your composition.
The musical scrapper. Lindsay, have you ever used the Zen watercolor brushes?
Yes, I have. They're nice. They're not quite as snappy as the Mimics or Princeton Neptunes, but they are very absorbent. They will hold lots of paint and water. They're very affordable. There are some golden taklons in the Zen range, and some goat, I think. But the black synthetic kind of faux squirrel ones are really nice. Just if you're buying them in store, give them a little tug and make sure that their bristles are in good, because I have seen some in the stores where the bristles aren't attached that great. I think I want a little bit darker, so I'm going to do a little bit more of the blue in there and just kind of maybe go in and add a little bit. There's some accent lines on some of these, especially close to the flower where it'd be a little bit darker. Now, hot press paper does not have as much tooth as a cold press, so layering, as you start to build up layers, you may find that it almost wants to not let you lay down any more paint because it doesn't have the tooth to hold it. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. Now I want to add some layers on the flower buds. So I'm just going to go right in. I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. And I'm going to take both reds and just mix them together fairly thickly. So I've got my quinacridone red and my carmine, and I'm going to grab a little bit of that mixed purple that we used from the shadow. And I am just going to kind of put in a few little kind of like folded petal lines here. And you could have scraped this in while the painting was wet as well if you wish to. Whenever you scrape, though, you can't take it away if you decide that you don't like it. You can't lift it back up, though. That's the only thing to keep in mind if you're considering scraping. It has to be pretty wet. Now, I also like to take a little of that red and kind of hit some of the edges of my leaves. It helps them look a little more vibrant, but you often will see on roses, their leaves have a little touch of red tracing the outline. I don't do the whole outline, just kind of here and there to give it a little bit of pop of color. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that red. I'm going to mix it into my green. I'm going to add a little yellow to that. And get kind of like a warm brown. Actually, I forgot we're going to use brown on this too. Guess we don't even need it now that I think about it. We could just use this mix. Add some of that into these rosebud leaves. Oh, the brown wasn't even needed. Anytime you need a brown and you haven't used any yet, you don't want to add a new color, see if there's two opposites in your painting that you can mix together, and that will give you a brown. All right, I'm going to hit this with the dryer one more time. And, oh, wait, before I do that, I think I'm going to go to a bigger brush and just grab a little bit of yellow. And maybe just add a little bit of yellow here and there on some of my leaves just to awaken them a little bit. Just gives it a little bit more vibrancy. I'll take a little of that mixed brown and add that into the stem too. I think it helps give you a vintage look when you do use a limited palette, because generally they would be doing a printing process with not a ton of colors. They do a limited amount of overprints, and that's how you get what you get. All right, so I think for this last layer, I'm actually going to use a little bit bigger of a brush. I'm more comfortable with that, and I'll be able to, I think, blend a little bit better. I'm just going to go in mostly with, to take that permanent, that quinacridone rose and mix it into that area where I had my purple and my red. And I am going to really just load up that brush. I don't think I need to dry it first. If I need to stop and dry, I will. I'm going to go in and trace some of my shadow edges. And then just kind of spread them out with this brush. This is my number 4 round.
Iron Mist, when you buy a set of 48 colors, do you find that there are many colors that are never used?
Well, I only use about 5 colors on a painting, but I vary those 5. I think if you're a beginner, that might not be a set of 48 might not be the best bet, because you might forget or not realize what color you're using because you have so many options. But as you get more experienced, it's kind of fun to try these different colors and see what you think. I don't really find that there's a lot that go unused, but I don't use them all at once. And I do have my favorites that tend to like wear out quickly, like the ultramarine blue or the quinacridone rose. Is the colors I'm always reaching for, but it's easy to just refill those from a tube if I want to. This is called the 2-brush technique, by the way, in case you're wondering. You've got one brush that you apply your paint with and the other one you blend them out with. And since I'm going on a base with shades of red, I haven't had to clean my brush out yet, which is really handy. My blending brush, that is. Well, now though, because it's starting to get a little dry, you need to keep that brush kind of damp. This is just building up the intensity in those colors. As you get to the bigger petals, you will have to kind of do them one at a time. When you're working on the tiny petals on the interior, you can usually do a few at once.
Herma, how do you frame a painting when it's painted so close to the edge?
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take mat board that's a contrasting color, and I will glue the painting to the mat board, and then I will cut the mat to reveal like around the mat board, so I'm seeing that little bit of color, and that gives me a nice frame. Or you could just mount it on mat board and use spacers if you just want to see that raw edge without a frame.
They also make the floating frames.
Oh, that's right.
Too. That they're, you know, the glass, you want to put some spacers in and around if you can. I think most of them come with some sort of spacer, but you can use the floating frames that don't typically have matting or anything in them.
And those are the ones that just have like the corner clips, right?
Yeah.
And it's glass, so you've got you're painting glass and the corner clips.
Yep.
Yeah, do they usually come with a spacer? I have some. I've never had spacers with mine. They've always been the glass. Well, actually, no, they've always been the clips, and then you have to get your own glass.
Yeah, but I feel like I've seen ones with and without, but probably. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've done worked in framing.
Right.
But that is also an option.
You do a very narrow mat or something like that, so you can still see the inside. Think about a white background. You got to be careful not to drip your paint. I keep getting funny water drops in my background. When I get low on my paint, I go ahead and mix up some more so I don't get stuck mid-petal without any paint. It's pretty much just this quinacridone rose that I'm adding at this point. The only thing you want to be sure on your blending brush is that it's damp, but it doesn't have any drips, any like big beads of color. Go around here. Any place you feel like you need to add it, go ahead and add it.
Yes, Shuey, thank you for protecting us from the dog barking down the road. Hey, enough.
And then after this, we're going to do just a pass over with our shadows, the shadow color again, just to see what we need to darken up and enhance, and then we'll be done.
Hey, I said knock it off.
Okay, I'll yawn at you then. Now, if you did need to lighten up an area, here's how you do it. You want a clean, scrubby brush like this Maxine's mop. And I just blotted off the extra. And then what I would do, like if I wanted a little highlight here, I would just gently scrub in where I want the highlight. I'm going to take a clean dry paper towel and lift. Just blot straight up and down. And that will soften your color and give you kind of that velvety, smooth highlight that you want on these flowers. So I'm going to zap this with the heat tool. So if anybody has any questions, you go ahead and put them in the chat with the word question in all caps. And then we will go ahead and do our final shadows.
Raphael, Akli, do you prefer Mission Gold or Schminky?
Well, I like the price of Mission Gold a lot better, but I like them both. I think it really depends. Mission Gold has, it's like a smoother paint, but Schminke is also fairly smooth. They're very similar. I think I would just look and see what price-wise, what's better where you are. Sometimes Mission Gold is much more expensive than sometimes the Schminke is. I feel like Schminke has a little bit more individual character between the colors than Mission Gold does, but they're very comparable, I think. Schminke's been around a lot longer and probably has a better reputation and is a little more tried and true. But other than that, I mean, as far as the way the colors look and how I like them both. Blow my nose. Chewy's not the only one sniffling today.
Oh, she's fine. She's fine. You spoiled brat. You spoiled brat.
All right, so I'm going to mix up a nice, rich, crisp, deep purple, and I'm going to use my Quin Rose and my Indothrone Blue. So I'm using the same blue the whole way through. It's going to give us a pretty crisp color here. Now, if it's too saturated, like that's pretty bright, I've grabbed some of the Carmine. That's going to desaturate a little bit because it's not quite a purpley blue. But having both of those reds in there gives us a nice transparent color, but it's still strong and just desaturates it a little bit. Make sure you don't have any beads of water on your brush. And now we're going to go through and it's almost like we're carving out the final details. So any place I had that dark shadow to begin with, I just want to crisp up the edges. I'm not really going to be blending out on this one too much. Maybe on some of the final, the bigger petals on the bottom might need a little blend out, but these are pretty much hard edges, hard shadows.
We're going to do flea and tick stuff later. Little flea and tick treats. You're famous, Chewy. Everybody loves you.
Chewy the famous dog.
She is famous. Sharon French, how do the Daniel Smith watercolors compare with the Turners?
They're much more vivid and strong. They have more pigment in them than the Turners. But they're more expensive. You know, you pay for that extra pigment. I recommend if you're looking to try Daniel Smith that you get their essential set. It's about $25. Well, it fluctuates. I got mine for $20, but it fluctuates anywhere between like $20 and $30 on Amazon. And they're tiny tubes, but they go a long way, and you can really see the quality. And those are 6 colors that you're going to use a lot. So it's a good, even if you decide that, well, I don't know if Daniel Smith's for me, those are good colors, and you're going to use them up. So you're not out anything by trying that. It's got 2 versions of your primaries. they're all very light, fast colors as well. So they're definitely your workhorse colors, and you will use them. You're pretty much looking for like the edges where you had the shadow. Try not to get it too outliney. You are doing some amount of outlining, but it's more, think of it more as like crisping up the shadow edge than outlining. You don't just want to outline everything, or you're going to end up with a more cartoony look.
Jordan Sinclair, do you like the Turners or Sennelier La Petite paints?
Boy, they're very similar. The Turners are probably a little bit better than the La Petite Aquarelle, just because the La Petite Aquarelle are a student grade. But they're both good. I mean, strength-wise, I would say they're very comparable, because I think the La Petite Aquarelle are very strength-wise close to the Sennelier paints. You really couldn't go wrong with either, and I think they're right about the same price point too, so very comparable. It probably just breaks down, do you like pans? Or I know the Le Petit Aquarelle are available in pans and tubes in sets, and the Turners are available in tubes only, as far as I know. Turners are good. They're solid value, especially for the price. They're not as strong as some other brands, is the only thing. But they're not bad. I mean, especially some colors are extremely strong. So this is one of those hard edges, that hard shadows that we're going to get in here in this final layer. The petals above are casting a shadow. Try to keep the whole shadow area wet as you're working. You're going to end up with hard lines, especially in a hot press paper. And then I want to fade that out to the edge. And sometimes you do need to go back in and just moisten the whole shadow so that you don't have any backwash or hard edges. Quiet group today.
Well, we have several people who are discussing the Daniel Smith store, because Grace lives in Seattle, so she's been to the Daniel Smith store.
Oh man, I would have no willpower in that place.
That's why if you ever plan on going to Seattle, you're gonna have to start saving your money like a year in advance.
Yeah, seriously. I'm so bummed to be missing out on the stamp show this weekend. It's the first year I haven't gone in like 5 years.
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, hi, but I'm going to a bridal shower tomorrow, and I'm a bridesmaid in the wedding, so I can't just skip out. Well, I mean, I could. I'd just be putting my own life in my hands.
Yeah, you would be.
Kelly would hunt me down.
You know, and the sad thing is, I haven't even used all the stamps I bought last year.
So that'll be a good thing to do this weekend then. You can pull out all the ones you haven't had a chance to use and use them this weekend.
It would be something if I got to use all of them this weekend. I don't even think that would happen. Man, yeah, my expectation of how much I can craft versus my, how many things I want to buy are not in line. But hopefully I'm better now that I've done the declutter, the KonMari.
Lisa Burke, I've never worked with pans. What do I need to know to try them?
It's the same exact thing as working with tube color that you've let dry in your palette. It's really no different as long as you're getting a good quality set.
Joe Maskey is shocked that you are not going to the stamp show. shocked.
I am too.
Life happens.
Yeah. I actually was even thinking about going to one of the Philadelphia shows this year, but boy, that's a long drive.
That is a long drive.
And let's see. I think I wanted a little bit of that brown that I mixed. Just on this little stem here. And that pretty much does it, really. And I'll show you both versions side by side. Get that palette out of the way. We'll just close it up. So we have a version with a background and a version without. The flower is a little bit more pronounced. Excuse me as I adjust these. It's backwards because the my camera, when I look up at my monitor, I'm seeing everything backwards. So it's kind of like trying to brush your hair in a mirror backwards. It's weird. Everything, like I put one hand out and it's on the other side. So so there you can see them side by side. I kind of think I do like the one with the background a little bit better now that I have a chance to look at them side by side. So you can do whatever fits your style better. I would recommend a cold press paper. Just between painting the two, I had much more pleasure painting the version on the cold press and the hot press. I felt like the hot press wanted to make my work streaky. But, you know, no matter what paper you're working on, if you get it done and you're not happy with it, you can always go in with like a colored pencil and brighten things up or add veining and detail. So never pitch a painting if you're feeling like it just didn't work out and you just want to get rid of it. Let it sit, come back to it in a couple hours, and then decide if you want to add more media to it. And if you feel like, well, I just want to throw it away, well, go ahead and add more media to it, because you're not going to, if you're going to throw it away anyway, add more to it and see what happens and learn from that experience. Because you don't, you know, there's no failure in art. You either succeed or you learn, and hopefully you do both when you're creating sometimes. And that's all I have to say about that, I guess. All right. Do you have anything to add?
Just thank you to everyone who said happy birthday to me in the chat. It's been lovely spending some of my afternoon here, relaxing, watching Lindsay do her work. So yes, thank you to everybody.
Cool. And I've links to everything in the video description, just to let you know those are affiliate links, meaning if you make a purchase, I earn a small commission. There's also a big sale at Craftsy this weekend.
Yay.
So yeah, so they have a bunch of their classes and member favorites under $20. My class, my mixed media class, is on sale for $14.99. There's a link in the video description if you missed out on that and you wanna check it out. That's the one that came out last year. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy crafting.